Hello and welcome everyone. In this video I want to talk about NEL because this plugin it was my first release ever. Still, it was just re-released and published on KVR the first time ever because I made so many changes in the meantime that I don't know, it's just a completely different plugin at this point. You will see why. I will go a little bit about the history of the plugin and then also show you which are the exact changes that I made from the last big stable version to this now big and stable version. But before doing that, I will give you some general information about this plugin in case that you just don't know it yet. It is available as a free plugin as VST3, AU, Windows and Mac, which is pretty cool. If you are on Linux, then you can compile it yourself, I guess, because it's open source. GPL3. So now, what is it? It is a vibrato, but it solves a very specific purpose. First of all, there is a lot of vibrato plugins out there, but most of them go into this lo-fi direction with sound degradation. And I just wanted to have something that is just completely clean so that you can have your audio degradation stuff separated from the vibrato, and because of that have more control over each of these things. Yeah, and over time I also added a lot of other features that I will talk about in this video, like 6 different modulators, the ability to dial in feedback, which is unusual for vibrato, oversampling, look ahead, a randomizer, customizable colors, modulation of the modulators and other parameters. Oh damn, I need to have a color scheme where I can see the modulation a little bit better. Yeah, this one. Yeah, as you can see, macros and also a remapping, modulation and all that. Yeah, I guess I will go into detail about that next. No, not yet. I will first tell you the history of this plugin. So first of all, it is available on KVR and I wrote a little text about it. I will also put a link to this video there so that everyone can see what this is all about and how to use this plugin and all that. And here is what the plugin began like. I was just sitting somewhere, I was a little bit bored. I only knew that I wanted to make a plugin with a space shuttle in the center, and then I figured out it should be a vibrato maybe, because it's an easy project for a beginner programmer. And here we have D for depth, F for frequency and W for width. Also a studio button for look ahead, because I figured that when you have a vibrato that is delay based, then the average of the delay will always be half the delay size, and if you compensate for that, then you can better mix that with the dry signal probably, which is also an idea that actually was implemented in the end. It's a great thing, and it is what makes this special and stand out from a typical delay. Just in case that you think you can remake this as a delay, you can, but you might not think about all of the things that I thought about when designing this plugin and its workflow. So here is what it looked like. Unfortunately, just an image, because this space shuttle, it moved up and down very slowly to, you know, show that it's in space and moving forward and all that. And here are the parameters. They were cryptically labeled and I was not very happy about that. Also, whenever I wanted to add features, it was kind of complicated, because I had to draw the assets of that every time with this pixel art style. I definitely love this style and I would love to come back to it, but the main reason why I went to a more flat surface later was because I wanted to be more quick with my new feature implementations. Don't always want to draw something first. So here we see it in action. I also added MIDI pitch band as a button. So now in our version of the plugin, you can select this as a modulator, pitch bend modulator, and have a parameter for how smooth it should react to your pitch bend inputs. But back then it was just a button that you click, and when it was clicked, then pitch bend values had an influence on the vibrato. Also, it had a little text editor here, which didn't look like a text editor, but it was one. And it says buffer size, because that's where you can set the size of the buffer of the delay. This feature is also still present, but it's not a text editor anymore, but just a knob with some predefined values ranging from 1 millisecond to 2 seconds. Because I found that this is a quite nice range. The thing about this feature is the more you turn up the buffer size, the more depth you have, so you can make crazier stuff with it. However, it will also add a lot of latency. So either you use the big buffer size and you want to go crazy, or you use the low buffer sizes like 1 or 4 milliseconds and stay subtle. And on top of that, you can turn on or off look ahead. Well, okay. Yeah, look ahead was also already present back then. It was just called the studio button, because I felt like when you're in the studio, you use look ahead, and when you are jamming with your guitar or something, then you don't use look ahead. The idea of this plugin, because I was listening to shoegaze music all day long at that time, was that shoegaze artists could use this plugin to add nice vibrato to their guitars. That was one of my main ideas. So here we have a new version of my plugin interface. So when I decided that I wanted to go with a more flat surface, I made it look like this. It also had the same parameters. Basically, I added a dry wet mix though, and it had this button that when you press and click and hold it, then the available buffer sizes showed up until you stopped holding it. It was basically like a quick access wheel, like in some video games, where you can hold a key and then drag into a direction to select a different gun or something like that. That's pretty cool. I want to implement something like that again for a plugin. And this thing moved. It moved up and down, and the more the RGB split was getting crazy, the stronger was the vibrato, which was pretty cool. Yeah, but the visualizer for the vibrato now is just this thing up here, because I wanted it to be a little bit less CPU heavy, and also, you know, it doesn't have to put itself into the foreground all the time. It can just be there and do its thing. Okay. Then I had the idea. I still think it's a cool idea to make a spline-based vibrato plugin, where you can sometimes trigger the vibrato curve, but it's like a completely different thing, and I didn't want to kind of stitch it into the existing NEL. Maybe I will make it some other time or so, but it also seems so gimmicky. I don't want to, actually. Maybe some other time, I don't know. And this is what it looks like right now, as you know. So yeah, it came a long way. And now I will tell you everything that has changed. Or maybe, first of all, let me show you what you can do with it. Some examples, yeah. Let's go to the changes a little bit later. So, first of all, let's check out this thing. Here we have a little track with a melody. And this track has NEL on it, but mix is turned down to 0%. Audio rate modulators. And here mix is dialed in, let's see. Okay, so as you can see, this just adds a lot of like distortion, or better saying, be more precise, phase distortion to the signal. In order to understand what's going on here, you have to see what is the audio rate modulator, and what does it do here with the notes. Okay, so the audio rate modulator is basically an LFO with a sine wave, but it's so fast that it's not really perceived as an LFO anymore. It is in the audio rate frequencies. And as the modulator suggests here, you need to put MIDI into the plugin for this to do something. And in Bitwig, it is the case that when you have MIDI on a track, then it will be passed on to every plugin in the chain. That's different in most DAWs, but that's why I'm telling you that here. So usually you would have to route MIDI into the plugin, but here in Bitwig you just have to instantiate it after the synthesizer that already plays the same notes, and then you can start tweaking stuff. You can try different octaves, for example. So on these really low octaves you can really hear that it's actually an LFO, which is kind of interesting when it kind of crosses the border between audio rate and low frequency oscillator. So yeah, that's something that you can do here. It's one of my presets, the phase distortion preset. But you can of course also like make your own stuff with the modulation system. I will go more into detail about that later. So here we have an example for just the vibrato preset. So there is a vibrato preset and it just utilizes the LFO, the first LFO. Second modulator is not used, which you can see by the mods parameter being turned down to 0. So yeah, what was going on here? A mix between these two macros, and sometimes you could see this little green dot here, which means that there is some remapping going on. Just to explain this really quickly, remapping means that, say you were on 50% macro, and you can make this not be on 50% of the modulation that you have on this specific parameter, so that it corresponds to a different curve. Yeah, and as you can see, the workflow of that is pretty easy. I'm not taking the hands off my mouse. Everything you can do with the modulation system you can do while being on the parameters. Don't even have to drag and drop stuff, even though you can do that, but it's like a redundant workflow. That was different in the last version of NEL, but yeah, I didn't want to spoil you too much already. Just by the way, so what did I do here? This is the... Oh yeah. Okay, stop. This is the Lunatic preset. The Lunatic preset makes a use of the extremely large buffer size of 2 seconds by using the triangle shaped wavetable. And the triangle shaped wavetable has the property that when you're dialing it to 50% wavetable position, it's a triangle, but if you're dialing it to the left or to the right, then it becomes more of a thing that either pitches the sound up all the time or pitches it down all the time, which sounds kind of fancy, because you know, you would think that you cannot infinitely pitch something up or down, but somehow you can, and I don't know, it's confusing. And when you then even dial in the width, which is a phase offset of this LFO, then it becomes even more crazy, and that's what you can hear here. Yeah, really pleasant. And now in the last example, this shows the envelope follower, which requires audio input, and all it does is it takes the dynamics of the input audio, which in this case is a bunch of drums, and uses it to modulate the delay directly. So as you can see, it started without any modulation because depth was turned down. Like in many cases, you can experiment what's better, dialing in modulation on depth or on mix, if you wanna dial in an effect that wasn't there before. Usually it's better to use depth because then there is no phasing. Sometimes it can also be better to use mix, but you can see mix is often introducing phasing. It's very useful if you want to make something chorusy. Okay, so these were some examples, and now let's go to the actual list of things. So this is my to-do list for NEL, which has nothing up here anymore, which means that I don't have to do anything, which is nice. So let's go through all of the points. New presets, yeah, okay, I already showed you. This is the preset browser, and here are some presets that showcase the basic features, like that you can apply a flanger by having the feedback dialed in. Oh, I should turn on the drums again. Yeah, and the other presets, a few of them you already heard. So the next point is randomizer shift sensitive. Okay, so in order to demonstrate that, let's make a new instance of NEL that doesn't have modulators in it yet, just the default one. And now you might be wondering what happens if you randomize everything. This. You find a lot of different settings, and now you might be wondering, like, what if you already have a setting that you like? Let's say we like this setting. I don't think it's particularly beautiful or anything, but let's just say we do like this. Oh fuck, my girlfriend wants me to bring her some food, but I want to finish this video first. So even though I can pause the video. Alright, so now I'm back, and I also got myself something nice to eat, but that's for later. Where have we been? Randomizer shift set. Yeah, okay, we like the setting, and now we can hold shift on the randomizer and click, and now we just have a similar setting. Yeah, it did actually work. It enabled me to find a better setting. So now the next thing that I want to show you is you can log parameters. Like you can say mix should stay the same, depth should stay the same, smoothing should stay the same. Maybe we even want attack and release to be the same, and the gain also seems to be quite nice tuned at this point. And just modulate the other parameters. Also, you can only modulate what's in the modulators of the vibrato. Yeah. Okay, so this is a feature. You can hold shift on the button, and then you randomize slightly instead of extremely and everything all together. You might have noticed it also doesn't randomize the modulators anymore, or the buttons. When you are randomizing smoothly, it just randomizes the smooth knobs, the ones with float point values, because well, they are more prone to react to soft tweaks. Dry, wet, mix, nun gematcht, ohne phasing, if no. Okay, yeah, that's very specific. I had a little bug in the code. Where the sound was just a little bit phasey when dialing mix in, even though that shouldn't be the case, and well, now it isn't the case anymore with oversampling, however. It also sounds pretty good at this point. I think it also sounded a little bit worse before. I'm glad to hear that it sounds good. Now, oversampler, weniger spektrale. Yeah, okay, so that was another thing that I had in my code. The oversampler was implemented with a low pass filter that you could actually hear very well, and then it changed the high end of the signal a little bit whenever you turned whenever you activated oversampling. It got a little bit dull, and I changed that, so now the plugin is like more suitable for mastering purposes. If a mastering engineer ever decides to use a vibrato, I think they should consider that more often, actually, because well, tapes and all that also had vibrato on them, and we liked the sound, so why would you know, we not simulate that nowadays as well? We simulate so many other things because we know them and like them from analog times, so why not vibrato as well? Okay, updated Perlin Noise mod. Yeah, okay, Perlin Noise got a big update, so we have the Perlin Noise mod down here. The Perlin Noise mod is a modulator that uses Perlin Noise. If an octave is completely turned down and we dial in a little bit of rate, we can see it creates a randomized curve that is always continuous, and that's why it's nice for vibrato. But it wouldn't be Perlin Noise if it didn't have an octaves parameter. So let's say you want to use one of the lower rates, but you still want it to be a little bit fiddly and do the crunchy stuff, then you dial in octaves and it will create some more harmonics in the noise signal that are around the place where the value already was. Then of course there is stereo width, which is an offset. You can change between tempo sync and not tempo sync. So here we have tempo sync, where it picks a new randomized value in, well, in the intervals that you set here, like in eighth notes. Usually you can barely hear the difference between tempo sync and not tempo sync because it's random. But if you change the type of the curve to steppy, then you can see the difference very well. So this one is very discontinuous. As you can see, the curve is just discontinuous, and that's why the sound is also discontinuous. This is more something for the sound designers. The lerp mode just creates linear interpolation between the randomized values, which sounds a little bit like a pitch shifter. So now we are still on the very high buffer sizes, which is why this sounds so extreme. But I just wanted you to know what it can sound like to use NEL with a Procedural Noise modulator, because especially these two modes, steppy and lerp, didn't exist before in this plugin. It just had the round one, and yeah, that's something that is new. Let's say procedural. Okay, I didn't talk about this one yet. Yeah, the noise generation is now procedural, which means that it will always come around the same point when you are starting the playback from a certain position. Let's say you start from bar 2 now. Take a closer look to the visualization. And yeah, this is defined by the seed down here. And whenever you make a new instance of NEL, it gives you a new seed. So each instance of NEL has its own unique seed for the Procedural Noise modulator, and that way you can have multiple Procedural Noises on the same settings in your project without it making overlappingly the same setting. The idea of the procedural mod is just that you do want to have a randomized workflow, but you kind of also want to have the safety that whatever you are hearing right now will be the same when you export the sound later. That's always very important to me, because I see myself as a beatmaker and composer and not just as a generative music dude. Okay, so this is the procedural noise generation. It's the same for the LFO, by the way. I also implemented the procedurality for the LFO. And the funny thing about this is it also works with a free tempo, with the free rates, not just with the tempo sync rates, which is unusual. Most plugins don't have this feature for the free rates, but this plugin does. So everything is procedural in the LFO and in Procedural Noise. Bias control for dropout. So okay, I gotta say, in an earlier version of this plugin, there was a so-called dropout modulator, which was meant to kind of simulate pitch dropouts like in old VHS cassettes or something like that. But I had to ditch this modulator, first of all, because it had a bug that could crash the plugin, which I just couldn't figure out. Maybe I could have figured it out if I really had tried, but I also thought to myself that this modulator itself was kind of hard to use and felt kind of dumb, and instead I used a new solution, which is the bias control. And the more you dial in bias, the more the Procedural Noise mod will, when it converges the 0th point, remap to some sort of funky movement, and that way you get some audio pitch dropout sometimes. Yeah, and you can dial it in smoothly from 0 to 100% and find a value that you like. So it can be a mixture between Procedural Noise and pitch dropout, which I find is a pretty cool workflow, as it just requires a single parameter. Okay, what's the next thing? Steppy linear round, already talked about this. Individual seed per instance, already talked about that. Added feedback and damp controls for Flanger. Yeah, so this is a vibrato, and it should definitely stay a vibrato and be perceived as a vibrato plugin primarily. But still, I wanted to figure out if it would be cool if this was also like a feedback delay, because it was a feed forward delay before. So I tried what would happen if it was a feedback delay. And that's what happens. It becomes a flanger. Pretty cool. Yeah, and by the way, if you dial in mix, it becomes kind of a chorus, even though I would say for a real chorus, you would have to put multiple NELs in parallel for, you know, for it to really be a massive chorus sound. But yeah, I didn't want to make a chorus anyway. Now change interpolation tab automatically with oversampling. Okay, yeah, this is a workflow one like before. In the last version of NEL, you had to go into the menu, and there was an audio tab, which is not here anymore, as you can see. And there you could change the oversampling state, the look ahead state, and also the buffer size and the interpolation type of the internal delay. But I thought to myself, who cares about all this crap? Let's just put it together into the same functionality, especially the oversampling type of the plugin and the interpolation type of the delay, because I noticed there are basically just two options for combinations of these that make sense. One of them is oversampling is off, but we use blind interpolation for the delay to make it smooth. And the other option is oversampling is on 4x, but then the delay interpolation is linear interpolation only, because that's good enough. And yeah, that's just how it works. Now for simplicity and for a nice workflow, you don't really have to know even what interpolation is anymore to use this plugin, which is cool. HQ and look ahead now on the main interface. Yeah, as I just said, it was in a submenu before, and I figured out that this was kind of dumb. Wider range of tempo sync LFO rates. Yeah, that's a little bit of a detail. Now you can go down to 4 bars of length and up to 64th notes in speed, which is pretty cool. Procedural LFO, yeah, I already said that. The LFO is procedural, Procedural Noise is procedural. Now, minus 120 decibel gain is now mute wet. Okay, so you can now mute the wet signal in this plugin. Before you could only dial it down to minus 100 decibels, which I guess it's also kind of mute, but now it's really mute, which is nice in some cases where you need to have sort of like control. For example, one of the use cases of this plugin might be that you have the macro modulator dialed in, and you are like controlling the macro with an automation, and also the gain with an automation, and that could, on the higher buffer sizes, cause some scratching sounds. Oopsie. Yeah, so that's pretty similar to how it would sound on turntable. And what real DJs do is they also sometimes dial in and out the entire gain of the track. So you could do that now by using these two parameters on a setting like this. Yeah, that's why I enabled the gain parameter to be on -infinity as well. Matched tempo sync ranges with hertz rate. Yeah, okay, so this is another workflow thing. In my last release of NEL, the free rates were slow and fast like this, but then the tempo sync rates were the other way around, so that the low values are fast and the high values are slow. But now I matched these so that it feels more reasonable. I reworked all of the wavetables. Ah, yeah. Okay, that's a pretty cool one. So we have 3 wavetables here, and you might be wondering why is there no fancy wavetable editor or the ability to import wavetables via audio files or something. It's not that this would be hard to implement, but you have to consider wavetables in a Vibrato plugin have a lot of requirements to sound good. One of them is, for example, that it always has to be continuous, because otherwise you get these nasty jumps like in Procedural Noise mod when it's steppy. And in the Procedural Noise mod I accepted it, but for my LFO I wanted all of the settings to be extremely pleasant. So I designed the wavetables myself, and if you feel like there's a wavetable missing that you would like to see in NEL, then you can still go to my Discord and just tell me about it, and if I like the idea then I will add it. But still, this is what we have right now, which is that the Weierstrass wavetable dials in from a sine wave to more of a Weierstrass sine wave which is continuous at all times. This is a fractal, by the way. So the idea of a Weierstrass curve is that no matter where you zoom in into the curve, you can never find a derivative of the curve, because there is infinitely much complexity. That's how it works originally. Of course, it cannot work like that in a wavetable, because it has a finite number of points, and also this is just a sine wave, which definitely is perfectly smooth, but this is just as a concept, you know. The more you dial it in, the more complexity it adds. This is pretty cool on some vocals sometimes, on the very low buffer sizes. I cannot demonstrate it right now here in this project, as I don't have vocals here, but if you ever came into the situation where you have a vocal that sounds kind of flat, like the vibrato is really ugly, there is barely any vibrato, or you just flattened all of the vibrato with melodial, and now you want to add new vibrato, but you kind of want to have a vibrato that really puts itself to the background, that doesn't really sound like a vibrato, but just softens up like the vibe in the background very subtly. And this is the right wavetable for that, because it has a lot of complexity, and on the lower depth settings and lower buffer sizes and low rates it just shifts the signal around a little bit, adds a little bit of the complexity, imposes it on the signal, adds a lot of soft background side lobes that don't really push themselves into the foreground as a vibrato. That's great. You can use the plugin like that. And then there is the triangle wavetable, which I already told you about. I want to show you how it sounds now that I have it here. This is one of my favorites. This was an idea by Signal Smith. If you know Signal Smith from the audio programmer Discord and from his own plugins, and yeah, that's the dude who came up with this wavetable. I just told him I want to have a wavetable with a triangle wave, but I can't figure out what else should happen in the wavetable, because triangle waves do this. Oh, I need to have a little bit more buffer size to show that. So this basically alternates between a pitch shifter that goes up and the pitch shifter that goes down cleanly. And different from a normal pitch shifter, there is no granularity here. Like usually in a pitch shifter you have to make some sort of windowing that makes sure that there is no discontinuity in the output, but you don't have this problem in the vibrato, because the amount that you pitch up is also the amount that you pitch down again. So you never exceed like the range of the delay. So in some sense it's cleaner than an actual pitch shifter, but also it's limited because you always have to have this up and down motion and not just one of them. So yeah, this is for those of you who just want to have a cool pitch shifter alternative. And when you turn it down, it does this. Creates a pitch shiftery sound that always goes down like a laser, pew 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 pew, and if you turn it the other way around, it goes up all the time. Oh, this loop is currently not synced to the tempo of the project, I think. Let's see what we have here. Tempo 111, we pitch. Now it is. Yeah. Oh, that brings me to a little detail. You heard the transients were kind of weird. You can change that a little bit with a phase parameter. Yeah, So that's what the phase parameter is for, like moments like this. Okay, the last wavetable is just a sync curve. Sync curve is really popular in audio development. It is often used to make low pass filters, so it kind of inspired me here as well. It's also a curve that is composed of sine waves, and just by itself it does this. So yeah, I like about it that it kind of has this little peak here, and then it has these two valleys where it does way less, and that kind of adds a nice groove to the whole thing, especially on the lower tempo sync values. When you dial in the wavetable position, you get a phase offset, what it's like, a 90-degree phase rotation of the original sync curve. And yeah, it almost looks like a normal sine wave, but it has a slightly different shape. So it kind of has a little bit of a stop here, and then it does its thing again. So yeah, it's just an alternative for something that is a little bit sine wavy but should be more unique. This is the wavetables. Alt-click on mod dial to enter destination value. Oh, okay, that's one of my favorite new features. So here we are on the rate setting. Let's say we want to have 1/4. That's possible. And now let's say we want to modulate to 1/2. Well, that's possible too. I just alt-clicked on this modulation dial and it does the thing. Nice workflow, right? Formula parser for string to value. Yeah, okay, I just demonstrated that because in a lot of plugins you cannot just open the text box and type in something, an entire term like 1/4 or something like that. But in my plugins you can do that because I wrote my own formula parser. And if there are ever problems with that, then please tell me about it, because I'm not the best at math, but I have tested this thing extensively and I'm pretty sure that it works 99% of the time already, so you can feel pretty safe about it. Yeah. Okay, so each macro has modulation bias. Well, more like not each macro, but each modulation destination. So here we have a macro that dials in from 1/4 to 1/2. But now we let it go to 2/1. Oh, oops, that was the wrong one. Lol. The modulation should go to 1, which is 2 bars. Now we want 50% to be back to where the 1/4 thing was, and it was more or less here. I'm doing that by holding the right mouse button on the modulation dial. And that way I can dial in a remapping or a bias on this specific modulation destination. So I can have different modulations from the same macro and they are not affected by this. This is for each parameter and for each macro unique. Yeah, so you can really fine-tune your modulations without being like super complex in a modulation matrix or something like that. I don't like that. Also, if you feel like fuck all these modulations, just double click and it's gone. I just saw there's a little bit of a drawing bug here with a bias that is still shown for some reason. Okay, but I could get away of it, get rid of it by having a modulation again and then double clicking on the right button. Okay, I guess I will just keep it like that for now because I really want this. I want to call this finished now, and this is not like a deal breaker or anything. But yeah, this is the feature. New default color schemes. I already showed them to you, and color scheme preset browser. Yeah, the color scheme preset browser is new. here. It looks a little bit like the other preset browser as well. Also, I think there was a button where you can go to the folder. Yeah, here. So this brings you to the folder of the files. If you want to delete one, it works the same for the other preset browser, by the way. Or if you want to send your favorite color schemes to your friends, I don't know. You can make skins for this plugin like that. Skins in quotation marks because it's color schemes. And then you can like go to my Discord and throw them in there if anyone else want to have them. I would like to have them, by the way. Okay. Added the Manifest of Wisdom. Okay, the Manifest of Wisdom is this feature here. You can enter wisdom. Let me think if I can think of something right now. It's not that you have to enter wisdom every time you open it, but the idea of this is that sometimes you have moments where you just feel inspired in some way, and other times you have moments where you just don't feel very inspired, and you can use the Manifest of Wisdom in both types of moments. So maybe I could write here, if you're, oh holy shit, why does it make sound now? That's weird. Okay, if your mind feels foggy, try some yoga exercises. How do you write exercises like this? Manifest. I'm not really sure why using the Manifest of Wisdom triggers the plugin to suddenly reveal sound again. Maybe it's also something to do with Bitwig. Yeah, it just started playing again, even though I was just using the I was using space here in the plugin and not in the DAW, but for some reason the DAW thought that I was also, that's kind of weird. But I think that's a Bitwig bug, not a bug of my plugin, because Bitwig has a lot of weird things going on when it comes to keyboard events. Okay, so now clear, and you might have a situation where you don't feel inspired, so you can click on inspire, and now I was getting a random message from the Manifest of Wisdom. And this message is, wenn man immer ein Schnuffelfisch ist, ist man ein fröhlicher Fisch, by Lionel. And Lionel is my son. And as you can see, my plugin is called NEL, so it's a tribute to my son Lionel. Just so you know, important information. Yeah, so this can be inspiring to me. And the important thing about the Manifest of Wisdom is that it should contain messages that are important to you personally, something that no one else can give you, something that I can't give you with my plugins. You can add it yourself with a Manifest of Wisdom. And there is the reveal button that just shows you the folder with all of the messages if you want to delete some of them or modify them or something. Then you can do that. You can also paste something in here if you have like written it in a text editor, in a different text editor, if you find it more comfortable. I would definitely find it more comfortable regarding the fact that the plugin just can start playback here. So, this wasn't a thing before, that kind of sucks. But yeah, I guess it's good enough, and there is a paste feature, which is nice. The macro modulator has sidechain gain and smoothing. Okay, yeah, that's the thing. So the macro modulator. All right. Okay, so the macro parameter is just directly moving the delay around. Oh yeah. And now there is a new feature. Let's say you want to dial in Sidechain Gain. So if you don't have a sidechain input on the plugin, then it will just take the main buffer, which is very chaotic in this case because it's drums. But you could, for example, use these mellow chords here that we had before and just say, well, they are my, oh shit, what, which track was it? Why are they all, oh no, I never renamed them. Okay, it's probably this one. Yeah, so now it takes the sidechain input. It still sounds pretty noisy. Yeah. Yeah, it still sounds pretty noisy, and I don't know if you need this. This is basically like audio rate modulation from a direct signal, and the only thing that is used to post-process this signal is a little bit of a low-pass filter that you can dial in here. But sometimes I guess it could be kind of useful to have something like this. The envelope follower also has this sidechain feature, and here you have to enable sidechain actively for it to work. But it doesn't seem to work. But why not? No input? Okay, I gotta say, I'm really not sure why the sidechain input suddenly doesn't work anymore. I didn't test this feature in a while. I guess maybe I should make another little build once this bug is figured out. So let me see. Auto gains, let me make a little bit of a note here. This is definitely important. Fix sidechain issue. Yeah. Okay. Doesn't seem to take sidechain if enabled. Okay, I will definitely do that, and then there will be a new build. Hopefully pretty fast with Mac as well. Yeah, that kind of sucks. I thought I could just leave the project behind now. But yeah, there's always something, I guess. A high pass filter. Oh yeah, the envelope follower now has a high pass filter, which matters for something like drums. Like sometimes the kicks are too boomy and then it just doesn't stop to be triggered. So that's why a high pass filter on an envelope follower can make things a little bit easier. And of course, Mac release. Yeah, these are the things that I did since my last release of NEL. And yeah, okay, if you're not too mad that the sidechain feature is kind of broken, then download it and right now and enjoy the plugin. I would definitely say it's enjoyable already. If you think it should be totally 100% there, then you have to wait probably. If I find to the point where I find time to fix the sidechain thing. Until then, this is the thing. This is NEL. This is the greatest vibrato plugin so far.